Virtual reality. Since the dawn of computer science, the idea that an entirely virtual world has been a unique concept and applications, though many strides for using the tech video games have made over the years. One example in 1995 has cast a long shadow over not just the company, but the console as a whole, the Nintendo Virtual Boy. The console's influence for several reasons. Was Nintendo's commercially successful console, as one of the last projects that Gunpei Yokoi made before his retirement and untimely death, and the design of the system actually had to warn people about potential eye strain health risks. You would think the 3DS was infamous for 3D causing those problems. At least that system worked, which is more than can be said for the red and black visuals of this system. To be fair, the original Game Boy had its visuals in black and white, or black and yellow screen pods released in 1989. However, by 1995, full color graphics were the standard, and 3D was becoming normal with Sega Saturn, Sony PlayStation release, and Nintendo 64 being a year out from hitting the market. So, as you can imagine, the few people who bought this at launch were immediately disappointed. Today, we're going to take a look at the system's games. There are about 22 released worldwide in the system's lifecycle, so for sake of argument, I'm going to look at all of them. I've done them via emulation, which, while not a one-to-one experience, is one of the few ways I can experience these titles without avoiding any health risks. The emulation is also based on the same debug tools that people working on consoles since 1995, so let's get started. Mario's Tennis, no relation to the Mario Tennis games that were released in later years, is a packing game for the system. All this considered, it's a pretty solid tennis game, which many have said is one of the best games on the system. That's just check your expectations right about here. Galactic Pinball is essentially a space-themed pinball table in video game form, nothing more, nothing less. Though not the first pinball game on Nintendo console at launch, there was a NES game, something called Pinball I rather liked. It's not really the mind-blowing VR experience in Summer 95 might have hoped for, which will be a current issue with many games on the system. Red Alarm is a space shooter developed by T&E Soft, who made at least 3 games for the system. It's easy to draw comparisons to the original Star Fox, and its vector graphic style has also drawn comparisons to the arcade classic Battlezone. There'll be a couple more games from this developer in this video, and we will come back to that. Yeah. Rounding out the launch lineup is Teller Boxer, a first-person fighting game. On top of being like a space version of the Punch-Out games, there's also a primordial version of ARMS in respects, both in terms of fighter design and gameplay style. It's actually pretty solid for the time, but we have to keep going. Virtual League Baseball by Kimco is more or less what you expect for a baseball simulator game on a console. It's also pretty decent, but also not something that really screams 3D VR killer app. A sequel was planned, but the console's poor reception and sales made it one of many games that was canceled for release. Yeah. Mario Clash, the system's own unique Mario game, is essentially a 3D version of the multiplayer mode in the original arcade Mario Brothers. This version was after the NES port, but before an enhanced version made onto the 4 Mario Advance games on Game Boy Advance. It's definitely not a bad game at any rate, but I agree the change of controls are pretty irritating. Normally, the A button is jump and B is attack, as it has been throughout the whole franchise. This game, however, versus the controls. Pretty obnoxious, even as far from the worst on this console. Yeah. Now comes the plum for a game on the system, Jack Brothers. Long before Atlas Shin Megami Tensei franchise got the audience it has now, this spin-off focused on the titular Jack Brothers, who are named Jack Lantern, Jack Skeleton, my personal favorite, Jack Frost. The gameplay is similar to the arcade classic Gauntlet, where you fight your way through holes with enemies to reach the goal of each stage. It's a very fun game that I wish was easier to find, but I must continue. Yeah. The next game T&E saw was Golf, though I No, the NES Golf was one of the first games that the late great Satoru Iwata had a hand in, placing one of the best sports games on the system. This one is merely less impressive. I'll admit, not a big golf fan in general, and if you aren't, this probably will not change your mind. Uh, Virtual Boy Wario Land, another fun platform game starring Wario. Much like the other games in this sub-series, this stars Wario who seeks to reclaim his vast treasures. It's definitely one of the better titles in the system, much like the next game we're addressing. Hmm. Panic Bomber, a puzzle-based spin-off of the Bomberman games, is one of the multiple puzzle games on the system. It's a pretty fun Bomberman spin-off where you can set off explosions to impede opponent's progress and clear lines. Reminds a lot of Warriors Wars or the Puyo Puyo games in that sense. Yep. 3D Tetris, the last game developed by TNESA, is pretty self-explanatory. It's 3D, it's Tetris, it's another version of the revered Soviet mind game. The original developers of early Tetris ports bulletproof software also developed a Japan-only V Tetris, and several games that didn't get officially localized outside Japan. Hmm. Another such game is Space Squash, a sort of sci-fi take on volleyball or higher law with flying robots. Again, not a bad game, also not something that would make the best argument for early adopters. It's fine enough, but I'm seeing a recurring issue not only with games on this system, but also newer VR sets as well. Yeah. Sadly, another Japan exclusive title is also one of the worst games in the system, Virtual Lab. It's another puzzle game that's kind of like the Game Boy Classic Pipe Dream, minus the fun. This is among the last Virtual Boy titles published by J-Wing and developed by Nakuti, a relatively obscure pair who are also responsible for the Game Boy title Chiki Chiki Tengoku. Reportedly, they got the news of the system being discontinued right before it shipped, and resulted in a small print run with copies online go for upwards of $1,800. Yikes. On a more positive note, there's the early survival horror game Unsmooth no Yakata, which was a pretty spooky atmosphere for the time, even predating both Resident Evil and Silent Hill. The game was published by IMAX, no relation to the movie format, and developed by B Top, a developer who seems to have fallen into obscurity. This title actually planned to be localized by Acclaim was cancelled on account of the console's failure. It's a shame, because I think that if they had, it might have worked. Not saying it would have saved the system, but I am suggesting it could have been well received if they had tried to bring it stateside. Oh well. SD Gundam Dimension War was published by Bandai and developed by Locomotive Corporation, no relation to the people who made Darksiders and the Destroy All Humans remastered on THQ Nordic. As someone who likes SD Gundam, I'm on the least favorite Gundam series, and for darker ones, this game does a little change that. It's a turn-based strategy RPG, but not exactly a great one. If you're not into SD Gundams, probably won't change that. What else can I say? If I remember this Gaia, it is not. Space Invaders Virtual Collection. Everybody loves a little Space Invaders sometimes. As a game, I've seen numerous ports since original arcade release. Heck, the Game Boy version is one of my favorite titles in the system. Now, this game never left Japan. If you played any of those Space Invaders and Space Invaders, you know what to expect. Limit all the descending aliens where they get you, with each round getting faster and faster. Since the game was developed and published by the original creators of Taito, they do a good job adapting in 3D perspective. Virtual Fishing is Locomotive Corporation's other game for the system, and even though I don't think that it main simulation type fishing games, it's competent enough, all things considered. Not much to say here. The last of the Japan only games on the console is Virtual Bowling, published and developed by the little known Athena Company. It's nothing terrible, but also something to write home about. Do I like how the lightly 90s and kind of the cover looks? The anime style, the backward hat, the baggy outfit. Those sneakers are cooler than any bowling shoes I've ever seen. Yeah. Back on games released stateside, we'll stick with bowling with Nestor's Funky Bowling, based on the Nintendo Power complicated the same name. This is a co-production between Nintendo R&D 3 and Sapphire. The latter actually developed quite a few games with a close in 2007, including other sports titles, licensed games, and a handful of early Rainbow Six ports. Yeah. Vertical Force is another game from Hudson Soft, and a scrolling space shooter as the name suggests. Some of the Lexi's games, and a decent one in the system. Now we come to what's easily the worst game on the system to get a US release, Waterworld. I've already reviewed the movie and discovered its infamy, and yet, somehow, this game is far worse. Even by the low standards of licensed games, as James suggested, it's basically a poor man's Defender centered around the film's Atoll set piece. Sadly, there's no digitized Dennis Hopper to make things more bearable. I mean, does this game run like shit? Yes, it does run like shit. So, that's the Virtual Boy. Is it deserving of its infamy just for 25 years later? Well, yes and no. Admittedly, I can appreciate the idea on paper what they're trying to do. At the same time, it's clear they were limited by the technology of the time, and the media reception to the system and all but a handful of its games cast a shadow over Nintendo, and maybe VR as a whole for years to come. Say what you will about the Wii U, at least that system worked properly. This one, however, has been mostly forgotten except in infamy, the Switch reveal event notably omitting the calls from their history of previous systems. No joke. So there's legitimately surprised to see the Harry's proven Teller Boxer in Smash Bros. Ultimate. The VR has made the Common Voice in 1995. Its main uses have been in other fields such as medicine, manufacturing, theme park attractions. Just in video games still being pretty niche, much like streaming games. Still, the success of Half-Life Alyx and Nintendo releasing a VR kit for their Largo accessory line does suggest maybe things will get better. Since Nintendo they got 3D mechanics down with the 3DS, who knows? Like HTC Vive, PlayStation VR, and Oculus Rift having a bit of potential, I can definitely see VR making another attempt to become accepted in video games as analog controls and digital distribution. One thing I can suggest is don't try to push it right as next big thing. Just release it and let people make their own judgment. That will be all for now. Take care.